Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one.
You think your feelings are your own. That's your first mistake. Your emotions are a battlefield, and right now, you're probably losing the war. Every time you react, you surrender a piece of your power. Every time you get angry, you're being played. Every time you explain yourself, you're begging for approval from someone who has already dismissed you. You've been told that expressing your emotions is authentic, that it's being real. But in the cold calculus of power, your raw, unfiltered emotions aren't a strength. They're a liability. They are the strings that other people pull to make you dance. Most people fail in life not because they're weak or unintelligent, but because they are emotionally predictable. They react too fast, they reveal too much, and they lose control at the exact moment it matters most. Manipulators, rivals, and even your friends learn your triggers. They know a single word can make you defensive, a subtle jab can wound your pride, and a well-timed guilt trip can make you crumble. They play your emotional keyboard like a master pianist, and you're the one producing the song of defeat. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance-era Florentine diplomat, understood this brutal truth over 500 years ago. His name is now shorthand for cunning and amorality, but dismissing him as simply evil means you miss the entire point. Machiavelli was a supreme realist. He didn't care how people should be. He focused on how they are, fickle, self-interested, and driven by passions they barely understand. He saw that real control isn't about dominating others with brute force. It's about controlling the one person who gives them power over you, yourself. This isn't about becoming a heartless robot. It's about mastering your own humanity. It's about treating your emotions not as your masters, but as tools. Tools that you, and only you, decide when and how to use. When everyone else is swept away by the storm, the calm observer gains absolute control. So, let's dissect 3 cold-blooded rules, inspired by Machiavelli's work, to stop being a puppet and become the master of your own mind. Rule 1. Master strategic indifference. Rule number 1 is the mastery of strategic indifference. This isn't apathy. This isn't about genuinely not caring. It's a calculated posture of withholding reaction to control the psychological frame of any encounter. Think about it. When someone insults you or challenges you, what's your first instinct? To defend yourself, to explain, to correct them. Your ego screams for justice. But Machiavelli would say this is the response of a subordinate. The moment you rush to defend yourself, you legitimize the attack. You accept their frame that you're someone who needs to justify their existence. You've just handed them the judge's gavel. Strategic indifference is the art of never defend. When provoked, the master of this rule uses a devastatingly effective weapon: silence. Not an awkward, wounded silence, but a calm, observant, slightly detached silence. This silence creates a psychological vacuum. The attacker expects a reaction, an explosion of anger, or a defensive crumble. When you give them nothing, their attack just echoes back at them. The tension becomes theirs to hold. They're left wondering, did they miss? Do you not care? Or, most unsettling of all, are you so unshakable that their attack was completely insignificant? This projects immense strength. People fear what they can't measure, and a person who doesn't react is immeasurable. Powerful leaders use this constantly. They let accusations hang in the air, unanswered, until they die from a lack of oxygen. They understand that wrestling with a pig only gets you dirty, and the pig loves it. To justify is to invite more questions, and to signal that your authority is fragile. Silence, on the other hand, implies the accusation is so far beneath you, it doesn't even warrant a response. Another part of this is deliberately giving a situation less importance than others expect. People are always testing you, trying to see how much of your time and energy they can drain. When someone manufactures a crisis to ensnare you in their urgency, and respond with deliberate calm. If they rush, you slow down. This detachment creates space, and in that space, you find clarity. You see the game for what it is, a bid for your attention, an attempt to make their priorities your own. To apply this, you have to fight your own social conditioning, that deep need to be liked. Start small. The next time someone makes a passive-aggressive comment, don't bite. Just observe it. Let it pass. Notice the discomfort it creates in them when you don't react as they predicted. The next time someone tries to drag you into their drama, respond with a calm, "I'll have to think about that," and walk away. You aren't being rude. You're being strategic. A manipulator's greatest fear isn't being exposed. It's being ignored. When you stop responding, you can no longer be controlled. They might call you cold or distant. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. You've stopped being their pawn and started becoming a player. Rule 2. Cultivate emotional detachment. If strategic indifference is the shield you show the world, then emotional detachment is the inner fortress where the real work is done. It's the practice of separating your identity from your feelings so you can make clear-eyed decisions while everyone else is blinded by panic. Machiavelli saw that personal feelings and attachments were a direct path to ruin for a leader. In his iconic book, The Prince, written around 1513, he argued that a leader who gets too attached to an advisor or a strategy becomes inflexible and vulnerable. He introduced the concept of virtue, not moral virtue, but a dynamic mix of skill, courage, and strategic prowess. A ruler with virtue understands that to preserve their power, they must sometimes do what feels uncomfortable and be able to adapt to changing fortunes instead of being paralyzed by emotion. Think of your emotions as ancient survival tools: anger, fear, guilt. They were designed for a world of immediate physical threats, but they're clumsy in the complex psychological games of modern life. Emotional detachment isn't about getting rid of these feelings. It's about seizing the controls. You don't deny the anger, you analyze it. You don't escape the fear, you harness it. You feel everything, but you allow nothing to dictate your actions without your explicit permission. Here's the key. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of your emotions. When a wave of anger rises, the reactive person becomes the anger. The detached person, however, sees the wave coming and asks, "What am I really protecting here? My ego? My pride? Is reacting right now a good move?" By questioning the emotion, you drag it from your gut into your mind. You turn an impulse into a piece of data. And with data, you can make calculations. This detachment is your primary defense against manipulation. Manipulators use your empathy like a leash. They want you terrified of their disapproval, so you'll betray your own needs to keep the peace. To cultivate this, practice self-observation. When you feel a strong emotion, just pause. Take a breath. Mentally step back and watch the feeling as if it were a weather pattern. Name it. This is anxiety. This is the desire for approval. That simple act of labeling creates a tiny space between you and the feeling. In that space, you find your freedom. Next, stop over-explaining yourself. Your decisions are your own. You don't owe anyone a 5-page essay on why you said no. The more you explain, the more you invite them to argue. A simple, "That doesn't work for me," is a complete sentence. It establishes a boundary without giving your opponent anything to attack. This leads to what some psychologists call cold empathy, the ability to understand what makes people tick, what they fear, and what they desire, without getting infected by those feelings yourself. It allows you to navigate social situations with surgical precision, seeing people not as you wish they were, but as they are. Bundles of predictable emotional responses. This is a skill for defense. It's not about using people, but about making sure you are not used by them. This isn't a simple mindset shift. It's a war against your own programming. It takes discipline. If you're ready to stop being ruled by your emotions, affirm it. Comment: I am in control below. Rule 3. Choose to be feared, not loved. The third rule is Machiavelli's most infamous declaration. It is much safer to be feared than loved. This is the line that cemented his reputation as a teacher of tyrants. But to get the strategic brilliance here, you have to look past the scary language. Machiavelli argues that love is a bond of obligation, and since people are generally ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers, they will break that bond whenever it's convenient for them. Love is unreliable. It depends on the goodwill of others, a currency you don't control. Fear, on the other hand, is maintained by a dread of punishment, a currency you do control. Now, so let's be clear. The fear Machiavelli champions is not the kind inspired by a cruel, random tyrant. He explicitly warns against being hated, because hatred leads to rebellion. The fear you want to cultivate is one of respect and consequence. It's the certainty in others' minds that your boundaries are firm, and that crossing them will have predictable and unpleasant results. It's the fear an employee has of missing a deadline for a demanding but fair boss. It's the fear a rival has of provoking a competitor known to be decisive. Love is pleasant, but it's weak. A leader who is only loved will find their followers abandoning them when things get tough. Their kindness will be mistaken for weakness. Their no will be heard as a maybe. They create a culture of disrespect because there are no consequences. The feared leader, however, commands respect because their authority is backed by action. Their no is a brick wall. Their warnings are not empty threats. This doesn't mean they are unkind. In fact, a leader who maintains order through a healthy fear of consequence is often more merciful in the long run than the loved leader whose weakness allows chaos to flourish, causing far more suffering. Machiavelli's prime example was Cesare Borgia. To pacify a rebellious region, Borgia sent in a ruthless minister to restore order with an iron fist. Once the job was done and the people started to hate the minister, Borgia had the man publicly executed in the town square. In one stroke, he satisfied the people's desire for revenge, while leaving them in awe of his own absolute power. He proved he was the ultimate source of both cruelty and mercy, a masterful act of statecraft designed to ensure stability. So how do you apply this without, resorting to medieval tactics? You become a person of unwavering consequence. When you set a boundary, you enforce it. Every single time. If a friend is always late, you stop making plans with them. You don't lecture. You simply withdraw the privilege of your time. The consequence speaks for itself. In a negotiation, you must be willing to walk away. The person who needs the deal less holds all the power. If they sense you are desperate, that you're in love with the outcome, they will exploit you. If they fear, you will walk away without a second thought. They will meet your terms. In relationships, this means not tolerating disrespect. It doesn't mean you become a tyrant, but it does mean that things like betrayal or contempt have a definitive, non-negotiable cost, up to and including the end of the relationship. Someone who fears losing you is far more likely to treat you with respect than someone who assumes you'll love them no matter what. Choosing to be feared isn't about being a monster. It's about understanding human nature and building your power on stone, not sand. It's about being so consistent in your principles that people know exactly where they stand with you. They may not always love your decisions, but they will respect the strength behind them. And in the world of power, respect is infinitely more valuable than affection. So there you have it. These 3 pillars of Machiavellian emotional control aren't just separate tactics. They're a unified system for reclaiming your personal power. First, strategic indifference. You learn to withhold the reaction others crave. You use silence as a weapon and refuse to legitimize attacks. You become unreadable and therefore powerful. Second, emotional detachment. You build an inner fortress to observe your feelings without being controlled by them. You separate your identity from your impulses and act with clarity, while others are lost in an emotional fog. And third, you choose to be feared over loved. Not hated, but respected. You build your authority not on fickle affection, but on the unshakable foundation of consequence and self-respect. Most people will hear this and call it cold or cynical. Let them. They're the ones who will remain emotionally enslaved, reacting to every push and pull, and constantly seeking approval and wondering why they're always one step behind. They're playing checkers, moving with impulse. You must learn to play chess, thinking several moves ahead and understanding that the goal isn't to be liked, but to win. Look, this isn't easy. It requires you to fight your own instincts and the social programming you've been fed your whole life. But the reward is true freedom. It's the power to remain calm in the storm, think clearly under fire, and move through the world not as a leaf blown by the wind, but as the wind itself. Feel everything. Show nothing. Decide everything. This is the posture of a person who cannot be moved. This is the beginning of your reign. If you got value from this breakdown of power, like this video and subscribe for more explorations into strategy and the human mind. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. The world is a stage, and for too long, you've been reading from a script someone else wrote for you. It's time to write your own.